Hey guys, Dr. Childs here. Today we're going to be talking about how to optimize your thyroid medication so that you can feel better. This video was prompted because I've been getting a lot of questions, a lot of emails from thyroid patients asking me when are new thyroid treatments going to be released? When are we finally going to get some good medications that are actually going to help thyroid patients feel better? And I want to make a video on this because that way of thinking about the problem is not actually correct. Because it turns out that most thyroid patients are not being introduced to the right type of thyroid medications. They're not being introduced to the right tweaks that can be made to their thyroid medication. And these tiny little adjustments that you can make usually result in profound impacts on the part of the patient. And it's been my experience that just making the right tweaks in terms of how you're taking it, the dose that you're taking it, what time you're taking it, what you're taking it with, and so on can have a profound impact. And that could really be the key to helping you feel better. It's not so much the fact that there are not good options available. It's more about the fact that doctors and maybe patients to some degree don't exactly understand how to use the options that are available. Because when we look at thyroid medications and how we replace thyroid hormone in the body, we really only have two main thyroid hormones that we're concerned about, right? We have T4 and we have T3. We actually have medications which are exact replicas of the same thyroid hormone that your body produces. So it's not necessarily that we don't have good therapies, it's how those therapies are being used. It's how the medication that you're taking is being used by you. So what I want to do is I want to talk about 4 tweaks that you can make to your thyroid medication to help you get back to 100% if you're struggling. So if you fit in that category, this information is for you. So we have 4 areas here. Let's just jump into the first one and we'll go through the rest here. So first off, we have the type of thyroid medication that you are taking, right? And within this category, we actually have 4 subcategories. So the 4 subcategories include medications that contain T4 only. And remember, these are bioidentical to the thyroid hormone that your body produces naturally. The medications contain the exact same hormone as your body would produce naturally in all of these formulations, right? Even Synthroid, even levothyroxine. So we have T4 only thyroid medications. We have combination T4, T3 thyroid medications. We have formulations of natural desiccated thyroid, and we have T3 only thyroid medications. Now, if you're like most thyroid patients, you have no idea that medications exist outside of levothyroxine and maybe Synthroid. But the truth is there's at least 10 plus types of thyroid medications that are available to you, at least if you live in the United States. If you live in another country, you might have fewer options available to you. But in the United States, there are many, many options outside of just levothyroxine and Synthroid. So even within the T4 class or the subgroup of, we have subgroups within the T4 class of medications, including regular, what I call regular types of T4 thyroid medications, and then better absorbable forms of thyroid medication. So let's say you were somebody taking levothyroxine, Synthroid, or Levoxyl, which are T4 only thyroid medications, but you felt that it wasn't getting into your body. So what could you do? Are you just stuck and assuming that that's the only option that's available to you? Not at all. We actually have better formulations that are more absorbable in this same class. And those include things like Tirosint and Tirosint Sol. So if you are taking a T4 only thyroid medication, which some people do well on, there are still subclasses within that grouping of T4 thyroid medications. Next up, we have T4 and T3 combinations. Now, my preference for most thyroid patients is to be on a combination of T4 and T3 thyroid medication together. You can either take them as a compounded medication or you can take 2 isolated medications, one that contains T4, one that contains T3. And here's the logic. Your thyroid naturally produces both T4 and T3, right? By itself. In the healthy natural state, it's producing both T4 and T3. It's producing about 80% T4 and about 20% T3. So my logic is, why don't we mimic what the body was doing in its healthy state? And that way we can provide a similar level of thyroid hormone as the healthy person would be producing naturally. That's why I'm a big fan of T4 plus T3 combos. So what you can do is you can take a medication like levothyroxine and you can combine it with a medication that contains T3, such as Cytomel or liothyronine, and you can take 2 separate prescriptions together. Alternatively, you can go to a compounding pharmacy and you can get the compounding pharmacy to combine both the T4 and the T3 together and put it in one medication. It doesn't really matter how you get it, but I would recommend considering the T4 T3 combo. And this could be used by smashing 2 medications together, but taking 2 individual medications, or putting them together via a compounding pharmacy. The next subgroup we have would be those medications which fall into the class of natural desiccated thyroid. These are combination medications which contain T4 and T3 naturally, but they come from a different source. So in the first example of the T4, T3 combos, those are usually considered synthetic in the sense that they're made in a lab, they're manufactured, right? But the formulations of NDT, they come from a natural source, which is usually animals. It's usually pigs, porcine. So these These natural desiccated thyroid formulation medications, they contain thyroid hormones from a pig. And what we do is we desiccate those hormones, we desiccate the thyroid gland, and we put in a certain amount of T4 and T3. Then we give it to humans as a pill and we say, here, take this. So that naturally contains a certain amount of T4 and T3, which is usually about 38 micrograms of T4 to 9 micrograms of T3 per unit of grain, which is just how we measure that. If this is all sounding confusing to you, don't worry too much about it. I have other videos which explain how these medications are dosed and so on. But just know that natural desiccated thyroid medication naturally contain T4 and T3 together, in addition to other hormones including T1, T2, calcitonin, and probably some iodine in there as well. So things that are naturally occurring inside of the thyroid gland. That was subgroup number 3. And then lastly, within the thyroid medications that we have available to us, we have T3 only thyroid medications. And this, even within this subgroup, we have immediate release and sustained release. So we have immediate release in the form of cytomel and liothyronine. And for sustained release, we have sustained release T3. So really what we have here are a number of different medications that you can be using and trying as a thyroid patient to figure out what works for you. So let's just say, for example, you're using levothyroxine and it's not working for you. Well, that's actually not that uncommon. A lot of thyroid patients fit in this category. But most thyroid patients will just say, well, I guess I just have to live with this. And I'll just keep taking levothyroxine, maybe adjust a dose up or down a little bit, but I'm just not going to feel well for the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be the case. If you fit into that category, try switching to a tyrosine, try switching to a natural desiccated thyroid, try switching to a combination of T4 plus T3, try switching to a T3 only thyroid medication. You can try all of these different variations of thyroid medication to figure out what works best for your body. And that's really the key here. We want to be optimizing the type of the formulation of medication for your body. But what's perhaps more interesting than this is that we actually still have 3 other areas that you can still make tweaks to. So let's talk about tweak number 2. So tweak number 1 is really the type of thyroid medication that you're taking. That's the whole thing that we just got done discussing. The second area that you can do is you can tweak how you are taking your thyroid medication. And what I mean by this is most people just think, well, I was given a capsule or a tablet of thyroid medication, so I guess I just swallow it and call it a day, right? Not necessarily. There are actually 3 ways that you can take your thyroid medication. So the first is orally, like we talked about. That means you're just taking your thyroid medication, you're swallowing it by mouth, and you're hoping that it gets absorbed in the intestinal tract. That's the most common way that people take it. But the second, I would say, perhaps most common way that people take it is sublingually. And not a lot of people know about this. That's why I kind of hesitate to say it's the second most common, but factually that's probably true because a third is less common. But you can also take your thyroid medication sublingually, which means under the tongue. Now, in order to do this, you have to mash it up and you have to stick it under the tongue and let it sit there for a little bit. And I have videos that explain how to do that. But I want to introduce you to this concept of using it under the tongue because it is a potential option. So a lot of the times what we'll have would be people that are taking, let's say, levothyroxine in this case, because it's the most common thyroid medication. They're swallowing it by mouth and it's not really working well. Well, you can take the exact same dose that you're using normally. Let's say you're on 100 micrograms of levothyroxine and it wasn't working well. Well, why not try taking 100 micrograms of levothyroxine but using it sublingually instead of swallowing the whole pill whole, or swallowing the pill whole? Now, that small change may seem meaningless to you, but it can actually make a difference in terms of how it gets into your body and therefore how you are feeling. That small tweak can make a lot of difference for a lot of people. So you can take your thyroid medication orally, you can swallow it whole. Number 2, you can take it sublingually. Or number 3, you can actually take it in injection form. Now that's why I don't talk a lot about injections very often, although I do have some videos on it. Most of the time people can feel good using the sublingual route or the oral route, and you can do those by yourself. But there are people who do benefit from taking their levothyroxine or thyroid medication via injection. Now, not all thyroid medications are available for the injections, but I at least want to introduce you to this idea. So if you're someone who is very resistant due to perhaps surgical reconstruction of your intestinal tract, or perhaps you're missing part of your small intestines or part of your stomach for whatever reason, then injections may make more sense for you. But I at least want you to understand that there are different ways, aside from just swallowing your pill, that you can take your thyroid medication. So now you can change the type of thyroid medication that you're using, and you can also change how you are taking your thyroid medication, whether that is sublingually, orally, or via injection form. So number 3, you can also change the time of day that you take your thyroid medication. So most thyroid patients have been told from their pharmacist and doctor and so on that they need to be taking their thyroid medication first thing in the morning, and so that's how a lot of people do it. Now, unfortunately, that can work for some people, but it doesn't have to work for everyone. And I want to introduce you to the idea of taking your thyroid medication in different patterns throughout the day. So the most common is for sure the morning, But another, I would say better time of day to take it is in the evening. Now, we have studies that show that taking thyroid medication in the evening may be better for thyroid patients than taking it in the morning, because there was one study that evaluated people that take it in the morning versus in the evening, and it showed that those people who took it in the evening actually had higher levels of thyroid hormone in their blood. So this would indicate, at least to some degree, that taking thyroid medication in the evening is better from an absorbable standpoint, meaning you get more out of the thyroid medication when you take it in the evening versus the night. And every time I sort of recommend this or talk about it, there'll always be people that will say, well, I can't take it in the night because it'll give me energy and I won't be able to sleep. That does happen, but it's very uncommon. I would say that only happens in about 10% of people. So most thyroid patients can take their thyroid medication in the evening, even if they're taking T3 formulations like Cytomel, liothyronine, or natural desiccated thyroid, and that will have no impact on their sleep. In fact, it'll actually make them feel better because they'll be getting sustained and higher levels of thyroid hormones in their blood, which will actually improve circadian rhythm, improve cortisol, and so on. So don't just think to yourself, I have to take it in the morning. Nighttime is another option, but that's not the only option. So we have morning, we have night. We also have multi-dosing throughout the day. So what that means is, let's say you're taking a dose of 100 micrograms of levothyroxine. You'll be told from your doctor, you must take that entire dose first thing in the morning, and you just take the whole pill, and that's all you're taking for the whole day, right? That, if you're like most thyroid patients, that's what's been told to you. But you can actually split that dose up and take it at various intervals throughout the day. So this is commonly done with T3 thyroid medications such as Cytomel and liothyronine, because they tend to be a little more powerful. But it can also be done with T4 thyroid medications. So you can do this in a lot of different ways. You can split it up into halves, you can split up into quarters. So what that would mean in the example that I used previously, let's say you're taking 100 micrograms of levothyroxine. You could take 50 micrograms in the morning and 50 micrograms in the evening, or you could take 25 micrograms at four intervals throughout the day, every 3 to 4 hours. And it actually works better for a lot of people. And here's the logic behind why that works better for a lot of people and why it may be necessary. So if you think about your thyroid gland in the healthy state, your thyroid gland is producing thyroid hormone constantly throughout the day. You're not just producing one big old bout of 100 micrograms of T4 from your own thyroid gland in the morning and then your thyroid shuts off for the rest of the day. That's not how it works. Your thyroid gland is producing a little bit of thyroid hormone throughout the day and more as needed. But when you replace thyroid hormone from a medication, all you're doing is taking one massive pill first thing in the morning and hoping that it works throughout the entire day. So by multi-dosing or splitting your dose up throughout the day, you're mimicking more closely what the thyroid gland does in the healthy state. And so that's why this has a lot of potential benefit. Now, the one big downside to multi-dosing throughout the day is the fact that it's hard from a compliance standpoint, meaning it doesn't always make sense because you have to adjust when you're eating and you have to remember to take it. And what happens if you miss a dose? And is it better to just take the whole dose and not have to worry about it because you might miss some? So you kind of have to see how likely you are to stick to the regimen that you're using and how badly you're feeling right now, because it may make more sense to consistently take the higher dose once per day than splitting it up throughout the day 4 times. But that's a judgment call that you'll have to make on your individual basis. And then lastly, we have alternate total doses by days of the week. And so what I mean by here is this. You can adjust, let's say that you don't quite, this happens a lot with T3. So let's use this as an example, because this is somebody that I know personally and they're having this particular issue. So this person this person needs a dose between 45 micrograms and 40 micrograms, and they need to kind of alternate every 2 or 3 days of these doses. So what we'll have is this person will take 45 micrograms one day, 40 micrograms the next, 45 micrograms one day, and then 40 micrograms the next. And you can even do something where you do 45, 45, 40, 45, 45, 40. So you can kind of alternate between the days to figure out a dose that works really well for your body. Alternatively, what you can do is also increase the dose on days that you know that you're going to need more stress, or days that you know your thyroid is going to need more production of thyroid hormone. So if you're planning a trip or something where you know you're going to have excess stress, it might make sense to temporarily increase the dose just for that couple days or the weekend, or the first couple days of the week or whatever it is. So you can kind of adjust on an as needed basis the dose that you're taking. Now the key here is to not adjust the total dose that you're taking every week. So what you would do is you would take the total amount of micrograms that you're taking every 7 days, and you can adjust how much you want to take on those days, so long as the total dose equals whatever you would take normally. So that might sound confusing, but if we did some simple math like this and we said, hey, you're taking 100 micrograms of levothyroxine every day, 100 micrograms times 7 is 700 micrograms for the week, right? Because that's 7 days. That's how much you'd be taking over 7 days. So what you could do is you could say, well, I'm going to take 75 a couple days. I'll take 125 another couple days to compensate, so long as the total amount of microgram dosing of levothyroxine that you take equals 700 at the end of the week. It might actually work better for you, just alternating what days you take more and what days you take less. So you have alternating doses throughout the week. We have multi-dosing throughout the day. We have taking it in the morning and taking it in the evening. Lots of different options, okay? Number 4, lastly, we have the dose. So most people, they focus a lot on the dose because they think, well, you know, if I'm taking 100 micrograms of levothyroxine, which is the example we've been using throughout this whole video, if we use this example of 100 micrograms of levothyroxine, maybe you think to yourself, it's not the medication, it's the dose. So what I need to do is I need to take 125 micrograms instead of the 100 that I'm taking. And alternatively, the opposite can be true. Maybe you're taking too much, so you need to adjust it downward. And that definitely can be the case for a lot of people, which is why it's included here. So you can either go up or you can go down on any of the medications that I've listed previously. And in addition, if you're going to make changes and you're going to blame your dose, you have to make sure that you give it a sufficient amount of time to work inside of the body. So what that usually means for most people is a good 4 to 6 weeks of any change of thyroid hormone. You need to wait 4 to 6 weeks after changing that dose to determine whether or not it's working for you. So if you go up or you go down, give your body that allotted time to make sure that it's working or not. So between these 4 tweaks, we have, so I'm just going to go over these real quick again. We have, first off, we have the thyroid medication type. And within those, we have T4 only, we have T4, T3 combos, we have NDT, and we have T3 only. Then we have how to take your medication, which is via the sublingual route, the oral route, or in the injection route. And then third, we have the time of day that you take your thyroid medication, which would be morning, night, multi-dosing throughout the day, or alternate total doses by days of the week. And then lastly, we have adjustments to the dose. So if you look at all of these variables and you can tweak any single one of them, you have a huge amount of options available to you, such that if you tweak them correctly and if you make the necessary changes, you can almost always find the right type of thyroid medication that works best for you. Now, yes, that might mean you need to switch from levothyroxine to Tirosint, and you need to take Tirosint twice per day, and you need to take it sublingually, and you need to take it in the evening, or you need to take it 2 times per day. That may be what your body needs. And you may do really well on that and not really well on 100 micrograms of levothyroxine or just 100 micrograms of Tirosint by itself. You're going to have to play around with this. But I would recommend spending some time to do that because these small tweaks can make all the difference for many thyroid patients. So if you're going to make changes to your thyroid medication, always, this is a warning, always do it under the supervision of your physician. That's the safest way to do it, and it'll make sure that you don't have any problems with it. Most of the time, these changes will not cause any issues. In fact, most of the time, it'll just make you feel better. But because there is a chance that it might make you feel better, there's also a chance it might make you feel worse. Now, it's not going to cause any long-term life-threatening conditions or anything like that, but you do want to have some supervision while you do this. So it's been my experience, lastly, that when you do these things, that you can get back to 100%, which is really the goal. And that's really what I'm trying to help you guys do. So if you have any questions about this topic of optimizing your thyroid medication, leave your comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure that you download my free thyroid PDF resources. I have tons of information, all designed to help thyroid patients like you feel better. So make sure you check those out. And that's all I have. So otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.